Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the shiur for tonight. We're doing it in the Bet Knesset in Or Torah. I just want to thank sponsor for our food tonight, Rachel Shandali. Thank you very much. And of course, I also want to thank Berta and David, since they graciously open up their house every single week almost to our shiur. Today they couldn't do it, so we're doing it in the Bet Knesset instead. May Hashem give them beracha in all that they do, as with our sponsor. It's unfortunate we don't spend a lot of time in Sefer Vayikra. Most of the time, Sefer Vayikra, we finish very, very quickly. Tazri'a Metzorah, most of the time those parashot are together. Aharemot and Kedoshim, most of the time those parashot are together. And then Behar and Bechukotai, most of the time those parashot are together. So within a very short period of time, we start with Vayikra, and before you know, we're in Bemidbar. And there's a lot in Vayikra. Like if anybody remembers from the class I gave 5-6 weeks ago, that out of all the Sfarim of the Torah that you teach children, the first one we teach them is Sefer Vayikra. Yavo tehorim v'yasku bitorim. Let ones who are pure yasku b'tehorim. Because Sefer Vayikra is really talking about how one gets close to God. If we open up to the beginning of Sefer Vayikra, it says, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. Opens up, it says Vayikra el Moshe, that Hashem called to Moshe, because Moshe Rabbeinu was stepping back because of the kavod of the Anan that was over the Mishkan that they had just built. And then it says, Vayikra Moshe, Hashem called to Moshe that he should come close. Moshe Rabbeinu was stepping back. And what does he tell him? Daber b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. A person who brings from amongst you a korban. What is the word korban? A sacrifice. Contained within the word korban is the function of a sacrifice. What is the function of a sacrifice? What is the pe'ula? What function, what pe'ula does the korban do? Mekarev. It causes there to be kiruv. It causes there to be closeness between man and between Hashem. Yes? Why is it that a sacrifice causes a man to get, or a woman to get closer to God? Why should that be? So the simple explanation is many times the person will bring a korban because they made a mistake. They sinned, they did something wrong. And the korban is basically the animal is dying instead of the person, because generally one brings a korban for a sin that had you done it purposely, a person would be required to get the death penalty. For instance, Hilul Shabbat, a person is mehalel Shabbat. If he's mehalel Shabbat purposely, b'mezid, purposely, it's chayav karet. It gets a karet from the shamayim. If there's two witnesses that see him do it in the time when the bet din is able to execute, then the person would get death penalty. Shabbat mehalaleh mot yumat. There's no question. And there are many other halachot. There's many other different mitzvot that if a person does a transgression on them, they're hayav karet. They're going to, it's a death-carrying offense. It's a capital offense. So when there's a person bring a korban, when he's shogeg, or she's shogeg, which means you forgot it was Shabbat. You made yourself a cup of coffee by heating up the water. You forgot it was Shabbat. And then someone told you, Shabbat hayom. Oh, so that's called shogeg. There was something missing in their knowledge. And the korban, what it does is the animal dies, right? The person leans on the animal, the samach yado alav. The person puts his hands on the korban, leans on it, almost kavyachol to say that really the one who should be getting killed is me. Even though the person did it b'shogeg. But the Torah says, no, you bring a korban, you bring a sacrifice, and the animal dies, and you should feel that next time you should be more careful. Next time you should set for yourself a reminder. Remember, it's Shabbat. That person shouldn't forget it's Shabbat. So we see that on the simple level, a korban, what it does is it reestablishes a relationship that was damaged. Because when a person makes a sin, it causes distance. It causes there to be a barrier between them and God. The way we remove that barrier in these capital offenses that if a person doesn't b'shogeg is through a korban. So we see Vayikra is a way, it's talking right away about how a person gets close to God. But there's another thing about a korban. What is else about a korban? When a person does a korban, he's giving. She's giving. Some of these korbanot are expensive. A person has to bring a whole animal. If you think about how much when you go to the supermarket and you get yourself some meat for Shabbat, it can cost you $30, $40, $50, right? Now you have to bring a whole animal. It's a lot of money. It could be $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Some things you have to bring a par. You have to bring a cow, a whole cow. You know how much a whole cow costs? And you don't even necessarily get benefit. When the person brings a korban, a sacrifice, and he did it because he made a sin, a chet, you don't eat from the korban. The kohen eats from the korban. But you, the sinner, don't eat from the korban. So what does the korban represent? A sacrifice of what a person has. He's sacrificing his mammon. His money, he has to give over in order to rectify the damage to the relationship with Hashem. And this reminds us of what it says in Kriyat Shema, that a person has the obligation to show love for God with all of his heart, and with all of his soul, and with all of his money. So korban means I am sacrificing to God, which means I am giving something to God. And that's why it says, Adam ki yakriv mikem. Mikem means from you. What does it mean from you? Who else is going to bring? I'm going to bring a sacrifice by taking his animal? That's not appropriate. Why do we need the word mikem? The word mikem is come to teach us what? That when the person brings the sacrifice, what he's really sacrificing is himself. And that's the idea of a korban. And much of Vayikra circles around this idea of how does one repair a relationship to God. Yes?
When you said might, well, the part that usually says might, that's part of money because you use your might to make money? Is that...
Okay, so the Gemara defines what me'odecha is. Me'odecha is defined as a person's money, his possessions. Okay? So that's me'odecha, something that makes a person me'od. What makes a person me'od? What makes a person big? Generally, we're talking about not people who are tzaddikim. We're talking about generally in the world. There's a saying, Ve'ashir ya'aneh azot. The ashir answers with audacity. Why? Because he has money. Sort of like a commercial from many years ago. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, yes? When a person has money, everybody wants to hear what they have to say, even though sometimes when they have to say, what they have to say is stupidity, is nonsense, is ridiculous. So this is the problem in the Olam Hazeh, that the money sometimes makes a person bigger. What? No, if the person has a proper idea, the money for Avraham Avinu did not make him bigger. Avraham was great, not because he was rich. Avraham was great because he was a giver. Right? Okay, but we have to look at the Bible, we have to look at the Tanakh and see how to live, right? And how's Avraham Avinu referred to when he has money? What does the Torah say? Ve'avram kaved me'od ba'kesef u'bazahav. What is kaved? What does the word kaved mean? Heavy. Most of the time, when people have money, they don't feel heavy. They feel light. A poor person feels very heavy. I can't afford this, I can't afford this, I can't buy this, I can't buy that, I need this.
Zahav, very heavy.
Okay, the zahav is also heavy, but here it's more than just the weight of the zahav, because a person can take all of their money, transfer it to diamonds, and it's not so heavy. But what does it mean? Kaved, that this brought him down. Something is kaved. What does it do? It has mishkal. It has mass. It has weight. What does it do? It brings the person down. Avraham Avinu, his money brought him down, not up. How does a person go up when they have money? Adam ki yakriv miken korban leHashem. By giving of the money, by sharing it with other people, by giving tzedakah, this is how a person lightens themselves with the money. So they can have a lot of money, Baruch Hashem, but since they share it with others, it makes them great. People who always keep the money for themselves, there's a saying, a rich person should be bigger than their money, not the money bigger than them. And that's talui, that depends. He has the money, the question is, what does he do with the money? What does a person do with the money? So he sees sacrifice as a matter of giving. What is a person willing to give to Hashem? We see in Kriyat Shema, a person has to be willing to give everything to Hashem. In certain circumstances, we should never be tested in these kind of things. Okay? So Vayikra basically talks a lot about the Mishkan, about the korbanot, the sacrifices, and then it talks in the parashot that we read last week about Tum'ah and Tara. We're going to get to that shortly. And then this Shabbat, the parashot talk about Kadoshim. How does a person become holy? And I want to make sure we have a clear understanding of what the difference is between all of these terms. What's the definition of a tzaddik? Yes?
A person who doesn't sin.
Very good. A tzaddik is a person, well, everybody sins a little bit, right? The question is, how does one respond when they make a mistake? The tzaddik fixes their mistakes, right? Sheva yipol tzaddik vekam. It's not that a tzaddik never falls. A tzaddik sometimes does fall. We're human beings. We have yetzara. We sometimes fail. But when we fail, it's a small failure, and it's quickly rectifiable. So a tzaddik is someone who doesn't sin. What's a rasha? Not always. Even if a person sins, is known to doing one avera, a lo ta'aseh. A person who does a lo ta'aseh that requires lashes, a person does that on a regular basis, is a rasha. That doesn't mean he can't fix it. Doesn't mean he can't fix it. If a person's eating hazir, he has a weakness for hazir, he likes to eat pig, he likes to eat pork, he's a rasha. Why? Because he's always eating hazir. When he stops eating hazir and does teshuvah, he has the potential to be tzaddik. So we see, if a person is in a state of rasha, God forbid, the first thing one has to do in order to pick themselves up is what? What is step one?
Recognize that you did the sin.
Good. Recognize that you did the sin. And? Is that enough?
Then you have to.
There are plenty of people that recognize that Hilul Shabbat is a sin, but they do it anyway. They know it's not allowed.
Then you have to repent.
So how does a person pick themselves out of a situation when they're, God forbid, in a situation of their rasha, they're doing things that are against the Torah? How does a person, the first step to becoming a tzaddik? So recognizing the sin, which you're talking about is teshuvah, recognizing the sin, you have to do teshuvah, right? You have to admit, you have to do vidui, and kabbalah al ha'atid, and agree not to do it anymore. That's called sur merah. If a person is sinning, the first step to raise oneself up is to stop doing the avon. Sur merah. If a person is continuing to sin, he remains in the state of being chas v'shalom rasha. Now again, not every sin makes a person rasha. I would say lo ta'aseh was very careful about that. Other things as well. But how does a person start the journey to being a tzaddik? Step one is sur merah. But sur merah is not enough. Va'aseh tov. A person can't just sur merah, because we have energies, we have different focuses. If a person is not focused on doing what is correct, they will naturally gravitate to what is incorrect or what they were habituated to do. If a person wants to stop drinking alcohol, let's say they're drinking too much, their friends are telling them they're drinking too much, and they want to stop. The first step to not being an alcoholic is to stop drinking. But in order to, so you have to, that's not enough. Because within a short period of time, a person's not feeling well, they'll go back to their bad habit. Va'aseh tov, that's the whole thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. After they admit what they've done, then what they do is they help strengthen each other. That's why they go to the meetings. They work with each other. There's always new people coming in. So they help each other. And this is va'aseh tov. This is doing good. And that's why in the Torah we have mitzvot lo ta'aseh, and we have mitzvot aseh. We have negative commandments, don't do this, and when we have positive commandments, do this. As we see in Adam Harishon, he was put in the garden, le'ovda ul shomra. Our rabbis teach us what is le'ovda, mitzvot aseh. What is le'shomra, mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Another part of raising yourself out of being in a situation of rasha is a person has to learn. There may be things the person is doing and they don't even realize is not allowed. So in addition to sur merav aseh tov, that only works for the things you know about. How does a person truly know? They have to learn. Shabbat is very complicated. It's very easy for a person to be mehalel Shabbat if they don't study the laws of Shabbat. And that goes for anything else. So that's why learning is such an important part of becoming on the path in the proper way. Okay, so we've defined of what is a tzaddik.
I have a small question.
Yes, please.
39 melachot,
Yeah.
don't do on Saturday.
Yes.
If you do like one or two of them, you'll have rasha?
Yeah.
Really?
It's not just 39, by the way.
No?
No.
It's not 39?
There are 39 what's called av melachot.
Much more.
Then there are toladot, which means there are cousins. Okay, you have the av and you have toladah. And there is, in the Yerushalmi, it says that for every av, there are 39 toladot.
So we have like
So do 39 squared, and that's how many things are potentially forbidden from the Torah to do on Shabbat.
1,500, 1,600.
39 squared, that's
40 times 40 would be 16.
right, 1,600, I'm sorry,
Less
1,600.
than that.
So 1,600, there you go, that's how many, 39 squared.
It's a little less.
Okay. So I want to ask, if we read Parashat Tazria and Metzorah, there's a common theme throughout both of these parashot, which is called Tum'ah and Tahara. Unfortunately, English is a nice language, but it's not a holy language. And since it's not a holy language, it really can't touch on this concept because this is something that is spiritual. And since it's spiritual, the English language almost doesn't even have the tools in order to describe it well. And that's why you can't explain it with one word. You have to explain it with more than one word. Generally, when you look at the translation of the word tahor, it's pure. When you look at the translation of the word tameh, it is impure. Yes? Okay? But in Hebrew, we have a different word for pure. It's called zach. Shemen zait zach. Zach is pure, free of impurities. So when physical items are pure in biblical Hebrew, the word is zach. Right? Levona zakah. Babevadia. Zakah is pure frankincense, which means without impurities, because that's talking about something physical. So in Hebrew we have a word zach, that's pure, and lozach, I don't know what the opposite is in Hebrew, but lozach would be impure from a physical point of view. So tahor and tameh, even though sometimes we do see in the Hebrew language it's used like that, In our parashat, it's not talking about anything physical. There is nothing physically dirty about a woman that gives birth to a child. There is nothing physically dirty about a woman that has her menstrual cycle. It has nothing to do with physical dirtiness. And the word dirty is not even an appropriate word either. It's not dirty. There's no dirt. So the word tameh and tahor are really completely on spiritual terms. And what do they really mean? It's a state of being. It's a spiritual state of being. Okay, what do I mean by that? When a person is tameh, there is a certain things they cannot do. And they all have to do with connecting to either God or other people. Right? So in our parasha, the Metzorah. What is the Metzorah? Where is he? The Metzorah, Badad Yeshev Michutz Lamahaneh. The Metzorah has to be Badad. What is Badad? Alone. Yeshev, which means he dwells alone. Michutz Lamahaneh, which means being part of the Mahaneh, being part of the Jewish encampment, requires a state of Tehorah. Now, there are different levels. We remember that there are 3 different levels for the Jewish encampment. One is Mahaneh Yisrael. One is Mahaneh Leviah. And one is called Mahaneh Shekhinah or Mahaneh Keunah. And different levels of Tum'ah will prevent you from going into the different levels. So let's think about that. The Metzorah is Tameh. Where is the Metzorah? He's not allowed to be in Mahaneh Yisrael. The Metzorah has to be outside Mahaneh Yisrael. The Metzorah has to be outside Mahaneh Yisrael. Let's give you another example. A person who comes into contact with a dead body, it's called Tameh Met. A person who comes into contact with a dead body doesn't have to live outside Mahaneh Yisrael, but he's not allowed to be in Mahaneh Kehunah. He can't go to the Bet HaMikdash. He can't go to the Mishkan. Which means before the person can approach and get closer, they first have to remove the situation of Tum'ah. Which means they have to change their state with regarding Tum'ah and Tahara.
How long you have to change?
Every Tum'ah is different. Some of them is 1 day. Some of them is 7 days. Depends on the different Tum'ah. Like for instance, Tameh Met is 7 days. A Zava is 7 days. Okay? Now, our parasha talks about 3 different types of ladies. Talks about Yoledet, right? Daber b'nei Yisrael lemor, Isha ki tazriya v'yaleda zachar. It's talking about a Yoledet, a woman who gives birth to a child, right? And what does it say? V'tame'ah shiv'at yamim. She is tame'ah. She is, for lack of a better term in English, spiritually impure for 7 days. And then the Torah adds something else. Kimeh nidat devotah titma. Which means it likens the period of time that the woman, after giving birth to a son, to the same 7-day period that she has when she has her menstrual cycle. That's called nidah. That's why it's called nidat devotah. It just so happens when a woman is having her menstrual cycle, she is forbidden to be with her husband. That's nidah. This is also and we read in Parashat Aharemot and in Parashat Kedoshim, that a woman when she's nidah, she's not allowed to be with her husband physically, intimately. And chas v'shalom, if a woman is with her husband when she's nidah, it's hayav karet. It's no different than Hilul Shabbat. It's very, very serious. Karet means cut off, which means a person has to have a connection to the Shamayim. right? And I mean, there's various different understandings. I'm going to give you a simpler. Karet means a person can die before they're a certain age, okay? But karet means you're cutting your connection, which means you're causing there to be a big separation between yourself and Shamayim. This can be fixed. Every sin a person does, Baruch Hashem, there's teshuvah. But we need to understand that we're reading these parashot in Vayikra. They're talking about things that are very, very serious. A yoledet, a woman who gives birth to a child, for 7 days, she is considered to be like when she's nida. Even though it's technically she's not menstruating, right? It's blood from the uterus. Yes?
But when you say 7 days, you mean 7 days actually bleeding is done?
Okay. This is complicated. Suffice it to say, I'm going to address your question, and the way things were dealt with in the Torah is different than we deal with them today. Okay, we're going to talk about that. So hold on to your question. Okay, so we see how Parasha compares the woman who gives birth to a zachar to the nida, to say they're in the same boat. A woman who gives birth to a son cannot be with her husband for 7 days. Okay? And then what do we see? The next pasuk, Ubayom hashemini yimor besar olato. And on the 8th day, you do brit milah for the boy, right? And he is circumcised. And then now the Torah tells us, Ushloshim yom ushloshet yamim, for 33 days. I'm in chapter 12, verse number 4. Teshev bidme tahora. Ooh.
So that's 40 days, 7 plus 33.
But there's a big difference between the first 7 days and the next 33 days. During those first 7 days, she cannot be with her husband. Why? Because she's in a state of tum'ah. What did we say tum'ah is? It prevents a connection. And in this situation, the connection it prevents is her being intimate with her husband or her husband being intimate with her. We have something here called dam tohar. This today we don't have. What is dam tohar? Means that even though she's bleeding, and even though the bleeding is coming from the uterus, which every other point in her life means that she can't be with her husband, during these 33 days, it's called dam tohar, which means the Torah assigns that even though this blood is coming from the same place, this blood is tahor. It does not make her tameh. Of course, after those 7 days, she has to go to mikveh, and she has to bring a korban the next day. That's what happens on the 8th day. After they finish doing the brit milah for the boy, then she brings a korban in the Bet HaMikdash. It's not talked about here, but it's talked about someplace else, that she has to bring 2 birds, either 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, whatever it might be. And then she can be with her husband, but she can be with her husband from the night before. Okay, but she has to bring the korbanot, which means the Torah assigns that if she gives birth to a son, she has 7 days of impure blood, and then she has 33 days of what's called dam tohar, pure blood. And then the Torah says, well, that's only 50%. What's the other 50%? V'im nekeva teled, if she gives birth to a daughter, v'tame'ah shivu'ayim kenidata. Now here it doesn't say kimei nidat devota titma, because Nida has tum'ah for 7 days. This yoledet of the nekeva, the woman who gives birth to a daughter, she has 14 days of what's called dam, that is tameh. But one would say to themselves, well, because why? God forbid one might make a mistake and say, well, she gave birth to a daughter. Of course, that's why, because boys are much more important. Chas v'shalom. Because the Torah comes and teaches us something else now. V'shishim yom v'sheshet yamim teshev al demei tahora. Just like the period of tum'ah is longer by double, 7 to 14, the period of demei tohar is longer by double. it's instead of being 33 days, it's 66 days. Now this illustrates a very important concept in the laws of Tumah and Tahara. One can look at Tumah and Tahara as potential. Potential for connecting. The greater the Tum'ah, the greater the Tahara. Because she is Tameh for 14 days for a girl, there's a greater potential for Tum'ah with the giving birth to the girl. That's what we're seeing here. But on the same token, there's a greater potential for Tahara. So one of the answers given as why there's this double period of Tum'ah is because when she gives birth to a Nekeva, what's the problem? It's not a problem. There's no Brit Milah, but why is that a problem? Because only women have this type of Tum'ah. And when did this type of Tum'ah begin? Who was the first woman, and when did she become Nidah? Chava, after eating from the tree.
Oh, wow.
Before Chava ate from the tree, there was no concept of Nidah, bleeding, nothing. After she ate from the tree, what did it say? Ba'etzev teledi banim. Which means when you're going to give birth to children, there's going to be atzev. What is atzev? Suffering, difficulty. Bleeding is not easy. Now, it just so happens that women get accustomed to it because since they're usually 11, 12, 13 years old, if a man starts bleeding from that area of their body, they start to panic because that's not supposed to happen at all. Yes? Okay? So we see that the greater so why is it that she has 14 days for Nekeva? Because she gave birth to a girl. And one day, God willing, when that girl grows up, she is also going to be Tameh, based on this. So she's almost like has 7 days for herself. And she's also has 7 days for the girl that she brought into the world. But make no mistake about it. The greater the potential for Tum'ah, the greater the potential for Tahara. Why? Because only women can bring forth life in this world. Only women have the ability, just like God has, to bring life. And not only do they bring life, a man has potential life. And the woman starts off with the same potential life. Sperm, egg. Everybody knows their biology. But the man is done. Well, not really, but from a caregiving point of view, from a nurturing point of view, the man is done when he's done. And the woman, what happens? She then brings this child, it grows within inside her, and then she brings life into the world. That's why Hava is called Em Kol Hai. That's why her name is Hava. She is the mother of all life. So the same detriment that causes there to be Tum'ah is the same benefit that causes there to be bringing life into the world. So that's how Tumah and Tahara works. I'll give you another example. We don't read about it here. We'll read about it in 5 or 6 weeks, maybe a little more. What is the most tameh thing that exists? A dead body. A dead Jewish body. Now, a dead Gentile body also is tameh and a very high level of tumah, but the Jewish body has a higher level of tumah. Why? Because a dead Gentile body, the way you contract the impurity, the way you contract the tumah is by touching it. If you don't touch it, you don't become tameh. A dead Jewish body, on the other hand, you become tameh by touching it. But there's an extra level of tum'ah called ohel, which means if there's a dead Jewish body in the room over here, and there's a roof over me and that body, I am tameh even though I didn't touch it. And if we look at the tum'ah, many of it has to do with, what is it called? Negaim, which means afflictions, but also to touch, which means how does a person contract some of these tum'ot? By touching them. But with a dead Jewish body, even if they are not touching it, the fact that you're inside the same room, this causes the person to be tameh. Why is that? Is a Jewish person more tameh than a Gentile? Yes, at death. But from the laws of Tumah and Tahara, what do we learn? That there's the greater potential for Tahara. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.